Well, hi everyone. Thank you for joining me today. In 2018, the Lord laid my heart to write a book called, the title of the book is called Greatness in You. And as a result of that book, I believe it's been an impactful book on the lives of people. And today I'm decided to just take the first chapter of the book and to read through it for you and to expand on some of the information that as I've grown since 2018 to now 2021, and some of the information that's in the book. And so part of what I will be doing is to read through the first chapter and expand on that for you. So my hope is that your heart is open to hear some new insight as to how great you really are and to expand on that information that is there. So what I'll be doing first is read through the first chapter of the book, and then we'll expand on that as the Holy Spirit leads, okay? So hopefully heart and minds open to receive some insight into your greatness. The first chapter starts, you have greatness in you. And I'm going to give you the definition again of the word greatness. Greatness means of outstanding significance or importance, superior in quality or character, noble, powerful, influential, eminent, and distinguished. And so I begin to teach the book with, you are great. That's a strange statement, isn't it? Let me say it again, because I don't think you heard me the first time. You are great. I don't care what you've been told in the past. I don't care how many mistakes you've made. I don't care how you feel. The truth of the matter is that you are great. I have come to discover that every person on this planet has been instilled with a God-given greatness. This greatness is sometimes also referred to as our potential, our purpose, our special gift, abilities, or talents. But I've discovered that your greatness is not just one of these, but a combination of all of them. It is the reason why you were born. And yes, there was a purpose to your birth. The greatness inside of you is not based on past action or mistake. It does not look at your age or missed opportunity. It doesn't care if you feel great or not. You could have done everything wrong in your life up to this point, and yet I can still say there is greatness in you. I am motivated to write this book because I'm surprised at how many people just don't know what has been given to them. They don't realize that God has a specific reason and purpose for their life, a purpose that is meant to impact the world. There are many people who don't realize the potential that is locked away in them. And if they do know, they don't know how to unlock it. Through my personal research and experience, I have discovered a major key to discovering our purpose, unlocking our potential, and avoiding or demolishing the blockades in the road that would prevent us from reaching our destiny. It is my goal, therefore, to share with you what I've discovered so that you too can discover the greatness inside of you, so that you can discover the purpose and the plan God has for you. God placed you here for a reason, and the world can't wait any longer. With that being said, we're going to look for a couple of points that I made in here about your greatness. If you are great, I think there's a word that's missing many times, that when we look at ourselves, we don't see that we have the potential of power. Power means the authority and right to declare and decree and command and to bind and to loose things. As a result of that, in the word greatness, because we don't see that, we see our flaw, our failure, and weakness, we tend to speak to our weakness and not our strength. What if we was to speak ourselves up versus speaking ourselves down? What if I saw what's potentially in me versus where I am at right now? Many times we are failing not because we're not great, we're failing because we don't know that we're great. And so part of this book's effort is to try to show you, if you start to see yourself from a different vantage point versus a lower position, but raise yourself to a high position, or to see yourself through the eyes of God. Here's my question for you. Do you think God created failures? Your life may have been a failure, but did God create you to fail? Or has there been decisions and choices you have made that's created failure, and thus you believe you're created to fail? But that's not true if you look at the word potential and power and authority, and that you are superior in quality and in your character. Where we're failing at, where we're struggling at, is the lack of self-control to develop our character. Image that we talk about, and we talk about later on, we'll talk about in the book, is going to talk about our reflection and image like God. What does that mean? That in nature and in character, in decision making, you and I have the same capacity and potential and power that God does. But because we don't know, we keep on talking ourselves down versus talking ourselves up. That's the reason for the greatness in your book. Because in every human being, there is greatness. Now, here's the key. It may take more effort to see it because many times what we're seeing on the outside is their failure, their flaw, their shortcoming, or their lack of control, or their language that they're using, or how they're dressed and how they act. And thus we tend to measure them not from the inside out of the greatness, but from the outside in. Does that make sense? I think it does. Okay. So in discovering our greatness that is in you, that is the reason why most people are struggling, because they don't know how great they truly are. If we ever learn to speak ourselves up, encourage ourselves in the Lord, oh my, how great could we be? There's no limit to what we can become. So I've come to discover that every person on this planet has been instilled by God-given greatness. This greatness is sometimes also referred to as potential. Potential means that which is lying below the surface you have not yet tapped into. That's below the surface. That means you have potential. You will always have potential. By the way, that's the reason why God is called omnipotential or omnipotent, omnipotent. That's the word potential, omnipotential. Do you think God is done? If you don't recognize that you're not done, no matter what you've done, where you are, there's always potential. Potential is that which lies below the surface you have not yet done or stepped into. So you're just like God, omnipotent. That's the word, omni, all, potential or power. That's the same word. That's your potential. So it means you're just like God. Well, we have not discovered purpose. Purpose means your original intent and reason for your birth. So because we don't know we are carrying purpose, then we tend to self-destruct if I don't see there's value in me, there's a purpose why I'm existing or living. That's the reason why many people are seeing are failing in their purpose, because they don't know what that is. So they start to spend their life seeking out for meaning and for purpose. Thus, the many things you're seeing in the media and in our world is experimentation. What do I mean by that? Drug addiction is an experiment. Drinking is an experiment. A lot of relationship with men and women with each other. It's all experiment. What are they looking for? They're looking for their purpose. Once you find purpose, your purpose dictates that you walk a certain way, live a certain life. But without purpose, you're experimenting with things to try to figure out what that is. But once you find purpose, your purpose will dictate discipline, an ordered step, how you live, what you do, and who you hang out with. That's what purpose does. So if you understand that's within you, and they have also special gifting. We saw special gift in your ability. There's certain things that's been given to you that's natural to you, that when you do that thing, it doesn't take energy from you, but it gives it to you. That's your ability. That's your natural talent. And so when you find purpose, that means your purpose will give you energy. It doesn't take from you. You can be doing that thing for hours, and yet you walk away more energized, putting a lot of time in it, than losing energy. So if you're doing something right now that's sucking the life out of you, odds are that's not your purpose. You need to drop it and find out which gives you energy, not one that takes it from you. Does that make sense? I think it does. All right. So if we understand the potential, but I've discovered that your greatness is not just one of these, but a combination of them. And every human being is carrying combination. We may excel in one area more than another. We may be a little weak in other, but we can develop those abilities, those talents, those gifting. The greatness inside of you is not based on your past action or mistake. That's one of the key things. If I can help you in any one area, is to learn to look forward and not backwards. Many of us are stuck not manifesting our purpose and our potential because we keep looking at our past mistakes. We measure ourselves by our failure versus not recognizing where I began is not the determining factor where I'll end. If you knew your future was brighter than your past, would it motivate you to get up every day to press towards your future? But you cannot step into your future without a plan or purpose to the future. So many of us are stuck looking back. Why? Because hindsight is 2020. We see clearly how bad we failed. We see badly how much I messed up, and I can easily condemn myself. And so if I go forward and there's no success, I can blame my past. But what if where you began was not the measurement of your future, but is where you need to start to build up character and strengthen you? What if the trauma you experienced, the abuse, the hurt, or what you hear people have done to you was never meant to stop you, was meant to propel you? Now, in a bad experience or some trauma, it's meant to be one of two things: a barrier or a stepping stone, and you get to choose which one. Sad part to say, many are stuck behind the barrier because they allow the traumatic experience to limit their ability to push forward, because every time they try to push forward, they're pulled back to that experience, that trauma. But if you recognize that the trauma was meant to make it, was given to you and you went through it, it was not a good thing in many cases. It was hurtful, it was painful. But if you use it as a means of a stepping stone, so when you go forward, you make sure this don't happen to anybody else, and that you're going to become better as a result of it, then that traumatic experience don't become a hindrance to you. It becomes a stepping stone to make you better in life. Ah, my wife is here with me. She has an interview question for me, so I'll have her ask it now, and then I'll try to answer it for her.
Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie Peart, Gary Peart's wife. And my question, so Gary, that's excellent that you're talking about the 2020 hindsight, because I know I've been one myself to just see the negative, see all the wrong things that I've done in the past. Do you have an example from your own life where, like, any examples of something that where you failed, but then you've actually applied this information, this what you've learned from this?
Yes, well, basically, most don't know this, and I don't tell the story too often, but my wife's aware of it. I am one of 34 kids in my family. I'm just one of 34, and I do not know which one I am. On my father's side, my father had 30 kids. My mom has 4. So I'm one of 34. I do not know what that is. My father was never there for me. I didn't know what a father figure would look like if you look at the experience. And so I grew up, I remember in high school, growing up angry, very literal with my word. When I threatened somebody to beat them up, I wasn't trying to help them, I was trying to beat them up. So I'm gonna kill you, I was gonna kill you. Because the anger had taken over, because I kept asking a simple question as a child and as a teenager in my heart, where is my father? Doesn't he love me? And some of you may be experiencing that right now for yourself, where you have this sense of abandonment issue. We didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. But that experience, being brought up with that without a father, and I'd be teased in school by other kids that they have no father, and it would make me angry. But there's somewhere along the line, that experience, people tell me, well, you can't because you ain't got a father. I didn't have a father figure. But the one thing I did that was right, that helped me a lot, was when I was 12 years old, I asked that question to God, God, where's my father? Why doesn't he care? And in that time when I asked the Lord that question, he says to me, I'll be your dad, and I'll be there for you 24/7. And anytime you want to talk, come to me. That statement that I just made is what changed my life. Because I understand my life was headed towards destruction. I continued getting angry. I was getting into trouble because of the abandonment issue. But the time I was able to go to God at 12 and talk to God, and he was always there and he instructed me, he took from me the anger. He took from me the sense of abandonment. He alleviated from me the sense that I'm nobody. And he said, with me, you can do all things. That word that he gave me propelled me to become an overachiever. When someone tell me I couldn't do anything, I used it as a means or a stepping stone just to prove them wrong, that you cannot tell me I can't do anything. If I set my mind to do it, there's no test ever been developed to measure the potential or the motivation drive that's when the person accomplished something. So I became an overachiever. When somebody tell me I can't, just to prove wrong, I did it to prove wrong. That statement being said, it now helped me to go through school, have 175 credit in my high school, graduated. When I was in college, I have 175 credit, overachiever again. You don't need 120. I went to 175. I started out in the Burger King system at 19, became the youngest restaurant manager at 19 years old, running $1 million operation while still in high school. Went on to become part owner of that Burger King. Went on to start my own business. Do you understand? But what was the limiting factor? What was the traumatic experience I had? My father was not there. Had I let that stop me being without a father, I could self-destruct or self-implode. Not true? And so many of us are self-destructing because our parents not there, we feel abandoned, we don't feel love, an addiction got in the way, some bad choices we made. And so because that trauma, that abandonment want to pull you back all the time to say you can't be anything special. You cannot be made whole until that parent come to make you whole. And the Lord stepped in and filled the gap. That set me free. And so now I've become a father to the fatherless. People call me many times, say, you're my spiritual dad. Now, how did I get to that position? Because I refused to allow the trauma or that experience or that anger to rule my life. I choose to become better. And so now going forward, I'm married now, don't have any children, but if I ever got married and got children, as I would say to myself, I would always make sure I'm there for my kids and my wife. I would never abandon them because I want no other children to go through the experience that I went through. You see how that works?
So just as a follow-up question, so that trauma of not having a father, just being one amongst a crowd of many children, you felt the sting of that trauma and that abandonment.
Yes.
And that could have led you down a very destructive path that you could foresee, but then God stepped in.
That's right.
And said, no, I'll be your dad.
That's right.
And then from there, so even at 12, it was from that revelation that you started seeing the greatness in you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I start to manifest that greatness. And I realize that that trauma don't have to dictate my future. That experience don't have to limit me. Yeah, it's a terrible one and it hurts when it happens and you feel abandoned, but it doesn't have to dictate going forward what I experience or what I do or what I become. And I chose to be better than my father. I say, I'm going to be a father to my kids. If I ever had kids, I'm going to be a father to them. I will never allow my kids to go through the experience. So you understand what I'm saying? So instead of being a barrier, I use it as a stepping stone to become better and greater. And that experience now become a testimony instead of being a hindrance. I can now talk about freely because I'm now looking back and said, thank God for the experience because it's what the experience really that helped me to become who I am today. Some of you need to get that. It's that trauma that I hate back then that caused me pain, that was hurtful. But if you go beyond it and become successful, you will look back at the trauma instead of being a bad thing, but an opportunity. And if you use it and now you're thankful and give God thanks for that trauma, because that trauma helped to shape you, that experience helped to shape your mindset and your desire and your motivation going forward. So it's how we choose to see it. Many of us are looking at it as a barrier, but I encourage you to use it as a stepping stone. Because one example I was giving people all the time, I said, when you look at Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, there's no one in the world, Evander Holyfield should beat Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a bulldog. But can I tell you what Mike Tyson was to Evander Holyfield? $10.5 million. He had to get past Mike Tyson. If he had gotten scared and allowed that barrier, that bulldog, that guy was beating everybody up. Most of you remember that. Mike Tyson, nobody could beat him. He'll knock you out within 3 rounds. He was so angry and tough. But Evander Holyfield fought him smart. He bit Evander Holyfield's ear, but it was $10 million later. So he was just a means to an end. So in other words, you can stop him or you can use him, and he got there and made $10 million. You understand? So it's how you choose to approach your trauma.
So all the people out there that have gone through childhood traumas, and when we say trauma, it wasn't just the lack of a dad in your childhood. You were born and raised in Jamaica.
That's right.
You were not a rich kid. You did not come from an affluent family. You came from
poor, poverty,
very poor. So you didn't even you didn't have the experiences
right.
that I just had an absentee dad. You had multiple traumas on top of not having a dad there in your life. Yet, despite the traumas of childhood, you still had that greatness in you. So despite whatever childhood traumas people have had in their past, the greatness of God
is still there.
The greatness that God put in them is still there. It's
still there because that's the measurement of the greatness is not determined by your trauma or your experience or what you've been through.
So what about the people that maybe not? So there are a lot of people that I know personally that have had great childhoods, yet somewhere along the way, not from a parental figure, but just in a situation, a friend getting bullied or beat up, or like they make bad choices and they feel like they've messed up too much.
How do we try to fix that?
Is the greatness still in them?
Still there. It is still there. They may say a golden spoon in their hand when they're raised up. Doesn't mean they have any less potential or purpose than anybody else. But because if they've grown up with no pressures and things was easy, when the trouble come, they let that stop them because they realize that you too, like anybody else, need the same pressures. For us to become strong, you need resistance. For a weightlifter, I don't care where you're from, whether you have means to pay for the gym membership or you're poor, can barely get into the gym, you're going to need the same resistance to get the same muscle. You understand? Now, I don't care if you're rich and you came from a wealthy home, you could bought the gym and own the gym, but you ain't gonna get no muscle until you get in the gym and lift that ugly weight. And gonna rip some muscle to build the muscle. You understand? So it does not matter from where you start out, whether you had the hand of privilege or you had the hand of lack. The pressures are all the same because why? God knew, and that's why he says to us in scripture, I will not put upon you more than you can bear. What does he know? Each of us require different type of pressure to manifest a great potential of who we are going to become. And he knows what pressure we'll need. So when that bullying came for the person of mean and privilege came, it was never meant to stop them. They were still to help build their character to become better, to go forward to say, now I'll never bully anybody, and I'll watch out for those who get bullied to help them. But they don't see it right then, the bullying stopped them, and they feel less than and listen to the word, and they get talked down, and they're living far below their greatness and their potential, and they give up. And that's a mistake. You don't want to give up. Use it, learn from it, grow from it, become better for it, and thank God for it later on. You know, in the moment you can't feel it, but it's important to start to give thanks for it. And instead of become a point where you quit or you give up, it becomes a testimony of the goodness of God who carried you through that to bring you to that place where you're going to become great and manifest your greatness.
So children have this greatness in them.
Yes.
Teenagers have this greatness in
Yes.
them. People in their 20s and 30s
Yes.
have greatness in them.
Yes.
People in their 30s, 40s, 50s have greatness in
Yes.
them. What about people that are over the age of 60?
Still have greatness in them, still have purpose in them, still have potential in them. It's the same principle of the seed. If you give me an apple seed, I have it in my hand and I put it in my countertop for 1,000 years. An apple seed, correct? An apple seed. And it sits there for 1,000 years on top of the countertop. Will that apple seed produce anything? No. Does it mean it doesn't have an apple tree or apples on it in that seed? No. All it means is sitting in the wrong environment. But allow that seed after 1,000 years to fall into soil and get some water. Nothing stops it. It'll manifest itself. The same principle applies to us. It does not matter how long you live, how old you are, until you take your last breath, you're still carrying purpose, potential, and greatness in you. And if you're not careful, you can actually take your greatness, purpose, and potential back to the grave with you if you die without manifesting it. And that's why we're here, to manifest, to make the world a better place. That's the whole goal of God creating us, because God was having a problem that required your birth. That means you've been purposed and you've been destined to manifest greatness on the planet to make the world a better place. And each of us, like a puzzle piece, fits into a perfect place that God sees the bigger picture, and He has us all as a puzzle piece fit in a certain spot that if you don't manifest who you are, then that spot is left empty, because you're so uniquely and wonderfully made. You're the only one of your kind. People may look familiar to you, look similar to you, they're family members, but they're not like you. You and I are uniquely and wonderfully made, and we all have a spot that would fit in the bigger picture that God is putting together. You understand? So if you don't do your part, manifest your greatness, you can leave that spot on the picture empty. Wow, you're more valuable than you think. Isn't that true?
So what about also though criminals, like for instance, the person known as the Son of Sam, who was a notorious serial killer and was arrested. But what about people like that who have done horrendous crimes? Like, is that greatness still in them?
That greatness is still there.
The greatness wasn't to kill people.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. That killing of people came about some traumatic experience where they led them to a place where they thought, okay, to take a life. That means they got to a place of, number one, they became discouraged. Number two, they became overwhelmed by the circumstance. Number three, they became angry. They couldn't see a way out. They were blinded by their trauma, and they couldn't see a way out. The next thing they could do is start to take the life of people and become a serial killer. Because they want to be that? No, they know deep down, they weren't created for that. But that trauma pushed them in that direction. Doesn't mean they're not carrying purpose, no potential. Doesn't mean that the life they take, they will not regret. But there's still greatness in them. Remember, every person is created in the image of God. And that basically means we don't always live up to our God image. That means basically your trauma will determine what you manifest on the outside. What's going on happens as a quiet internal and or behind closed door events that manifests itself in the light. And many times it's ugly. Abuse through parents, words spoken, being torn down, being picked on, all those happen privately. And the scary part to say is many of these trauma occur through friends and family. It is not strangers many times that does this to us. It's the people we trust the most that abuses us. Most won't say it, but it's just the truth of the matter. But to give you a perspective of that the Son of Sam still had purpose and destiny and potential, if you study the life of the Apostle Paul, Paul was once called Saul, was literally in the Bible called a mass murderer. He stood by and watched them stone Stephen. He would take people and throw them in jail. He killed people. That's what he did. And guess who's writing 2/3 of the New Testament? The Apostle Paul. So can you say he's any different Son of Sam? I don't think so. Yet he was carrying in him 2/3 of your Bible was in that man when he was killing people. You understand? So the Son of Sam had hope. Hitler has hope. If Hitler acknowledged God as his Lord before he died, Hitler will be in heaven today. I'm sorry. Most don't want to hear that, but that's where the mercy of God, the grace of God come into play. Because he knows through the nature passed on through us through the sin of Adam, that sin nature pushed us farther than we ever expect to go, have us do things we never thought we'd ever do, because we don't know who we are. That's why your identity, your purpose, and your potential is so important. Because once you know who you are, you know what your purpose is, it gives you a clear path, and it gives you motivation to walk in a certain pathway. And it gives you discipline as a byproduct of that. But if you don't know, then killing people makes sense. Hurting people who hurt you, that makes sense. Abusing those around you makes sense. It's all about seeking for your purpose or your potential or the greatness that's lying within you.
How about someone that was in really bad witchcraft and demonology? Someone like a John Ramirez, who was like high level, not just someone that paints their fingernails black, but was high level, worshiping the devil, crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Do they still have the greatness?
Oh, yes, they do. The greatness is still there. It matters not what it looks like on the outside. And that's why, thank God, he says, man, look at the outer appearance. I look at the mind and the heart. Many times what we're seeing is the outer appearance of a man. And we say, well, he was in witchcraft. Certainly God can't use him. Oh, no, God will use him. Let's be clear. Now, if you go back and talk to the individual in these things, you're going to see a trauma there that led them down the path. Either they were seeking out the power, they were brought up into it, they were told this way life is. There's always some story behind everybody's story. Many times we don't want to hear the story, we don't listen to the story to find out why they ended up there. Doesn't mean they're not carrying greatness, doesn't mean they're not carrying potential, doesn't mean that God can't use them. But once the Bible said, you shall know the truth. If you believe the lie and you live a lie until the truth come along, you can't change the lie. You understand? Because you're stuck in that mindset. So the mind needs to be renewed and transformed to let you know you're going the path of witchcraft or black magic. That's not the real power. That's the counterfeit. But let me have you encounter the real power. Then it gives you an opportunity to change your mind to recognize, hey, man, that's fake. This is real. I want the real. The real has more power. And that's where the transformation takes place. That's where we got to be renewed by our mind and inject a new way of thinking or purpose.
So my next question, well, I just want to say, well, John Ramirez was a former Satan worshiper, but he encountered Jesus Christ for himself and God is using him amazingly. Yes. The son of Sam did encounter Jesus, and God, even in prison, is using him. So that's why I asked about those two specific people, because I knew God's using them despite the trauma.
That's right.
And I knew they wouldn't mind me using their names because they're serving Jesus now. But this leads me to my question. Do you have to be a part of a specific religion or institution to have this greatness?
No.
And then second question related to it, but does being in Jesus have an impact? So do you have to be a part of, like, can you be a Muslim and still have this greatness?
Yes.
Can you be in Islam and still have this greatness?
Yes.
Catholic,
Religion,
Buddhist.
yes. Let me answer the first question first.
Yeah.
Religion is a cultural act. It's a cultural thing that we do. And it's a sense to help us to draw closer to God. But in that process, by being focusing on the God, it gives us a structure to follow to live a better life on the planet. Again, it's all of them is seeking for the same thing: purpose and potential, greatness and destiny. That's what we're looking for. So religion kind of help us to focus towards a God or one God, or in some religion, multitudes of God. So if they're seeking after that, God knows what they want. They want the real, and all of us want the real. So in that process of seeking, you don't have to be a part of religion to find greatness. There are many people in the world who found their purpose, transformed the world, and they weren't believers. Because the laws and principles built into follow certain principles. When you follow certain laws, the law of breath, you live. The law of lack of breathing, you die. It's common across the board. You're not a believer to die. If you cut off your oxygen in your mouth and nose, you're going to die. I don't care if you believe God, trust God, you're about to die. That's the principle. So in life, there are certain rules and laws that set up that you don't have to be a believer to manifest it. There are many who are not believers who found greatness, success, overcome life, transform the world, are great humanists that gives and help people. They do it, and they're not in God. So that's not the key to finding your purpose and potential. Now, what does help it, the second part of my wife's question, is that what does knowing God help you to find your purpose quicker and faster? Yes. Can I tell you why? Because he is the creator. He is the God. The word God means creator, source, and sustainer. So what God makes, he watches over his creation, and he's the one who puts your purpose and your destiny within you. He said, in the book of Psalms, said, we are wonderfully and fearfully made. While we're yet still in our mother's womb, God knew us. What does that mean? That means he's the creator, he's the manufacturer, he is the potter, we are the clay. So he gets to put in the creation what his purpose is. So if you want to know who you're supposed to be and become, may I recommend you go back to the creator, because he's got the full picture of what he's designing. It's the same idea of an inventor. It's the same idea of a manufacturer. If you want to know how the car should function the way it was created, don't go to the local shop. Go to the authorized dealer. Because why? In that, the manufacturer gives you the instruction manual pertaining to every aspect of the creation of the car, how it's supposed to function. And that's why he gives you what is called an instruction manual. He doesn't want you to guess at what's wrong with the vehicle. He wants you to know exactly what happens when so-and-so occurred. That's the reason why lights appear on your screen, on your dashboard, when something's going wrong. And then he recommends go back to the dealer. Why? Because they're authorized to repair that issue. It's the same thing with God. When you're broken, don't go to another created product. Go back to the creator because he knows exactly what's wrong and he can fix it. Same principle, if you understand how that works. So you don't have to be in religion to find purpose. You don't have to be in a church or organization for you to find greatness. You're great already. You're made in the image of God. And deep down, every one of us know. We may not admit it. We know there's something in us that recognizes there is a God. We don't admit it because our life circumstance come along, try to talk us out of it, or we have some trauma, or we prayed and something didn't happen. But we know deep down we're created to worship something greater than ourselves. It's in us. It's innate in us. It's created in us. It's funny, the proof you one telling me is right. When a person is in crisis, who don't believe in God, who never followed God, became successful in life, and they're about to die, it's funny, they never pray to their money. They never pray to their home. They never call the Maserati or the car. Whose name do they call? Oh, if there's a God, I believe you now. Isn't that interesting who they call? So they know there's a God, don't they? They may not admit it because they have life working for them. They don't need God. But the moment a crisis comes, when you hit your finger, you don't call upon the hammer, you call upon the name of God. Isn't it interesting how this works? And we don't believe in God, but we always use his name. That means he's innate in every one of us. Believer, non-believer, saved or unsaved, we know there's a God, there's a creator, and we now know we are made to be greater than we are today. So it's important for us to manifest purpose, destiny, and greatness because the world is waiting for you to manifest how great you've become to make the world a better place. All right. So that being said, like I said, I'm hoping this helps someone today in hearing this, and I thank my wife for the questions she's asked. But in this book, The Greatness in You, I just try to express to people that we have to start to see in each other our greatness versus our flaw. It is too easy to point out each other's flaw, to see the bump or the nicks or the hole or the crater in our face, our back, and this one's too heavy, this one's too. It's too easy to do that. It takes more of an effort to see the image of God in someone. So in order for us to be able to see that, we got to learn to see them from the inside out versus the outside in. That takes more effort. And you know what that will do for us? It'll help us to stop judging each other so quickly. You see, everyone you tend to point the finger at have a story to tell. And if you had not heard their story, many a time our judgment is in error because you have not heard their trauma. You have not heard what they've been through. You have not heard the abuse. And it's amazing to me when you hear their story, how quickly your attitude changes towards them. So let's assume each one has a story, has a trauma, but you have not heard it. So may I recommend that condemning them based on how they acted, recognize as a cry for help. And so we'll be more compassionate towards them. And that drug addict that we see taking the drug, why are they doing it? Well, I can condemn them and say, that's wrong, you're hurting yourself. I think they know that, but there's a story there. Something led them down that path to do what they're doing. So they're hurting. So our goal is to try to look and see them from the inside out and to say, God, have mercy on them because they're made in your image. And I know that's not the purpose for which you create them, but they still have greatness in them. So we got to learn how to see that great person on the inside, that they ever got a hold of who they are, how great they are. Their life will be turned upside down and they'll become the man or woman of God God designed for them to become. So in discovering your purpose is on goals to unlock your potential and avoiding or demolishing the blockade in the road that would prevent us from reaching our destiny. So in this process, we have to remove all the blockages, and there's also going to be blockages. Every one of us have them. It's where we began, and many of us have never lived in from where we started, and many of us are still reliving on a daily basis where we started. And because there was a trauma there, we tend to get stuck there. And I'm encouraging you today, don't get stuck where you start because the future is far brighter than your past. Your destiny will be far greater than where you began than the trauma, but you have to push ahead and to not stay there and not get stuck and recognize that a great man or woman of God that's in me, God wants to bring to the world. You've been created with a purpose and a destiny to make the world a better place. Some of you have books in you we have not read, have music in you we have not heard. You have creative idea with invention. You have artistry, poetry that has never been written because you're stuck at the trauma and the world is waiting for your greatness. So may I encourage you, get to your destiny, on the journey of finding how great you really are. God bless you. We love you. We look forward to talking to you next time as we pick up another chapter in the book. and we'll go from there and see where we can go and to give you some more insight in the greatness in you. And I'll say it again, you are great and you have greatness in you. Let's begin to manifest it. Bye-bye now.